Well, there went my shuttle driver. I just got set out up here at Flow Gap again, and I'm making my way back up to the trail, just a little ways on this dirt road. Yesterday, when I made my video, I realized I was just doing a lot of walking and talking, and it's sort of, I guess, boring just looking at me walking and talking, and it might be more interesting for you to actually see the ground that I'm covering. So I'm going to try to do this more. Of course, with the bouncing, it may make you dizzy trying to watch this. I feel a lot better today than I did yesterday. I tell you, it was just, I think I was just so spent at the end of the day Friday, and then laying in that shelter and shivering all night. My muscles just didn't recover. And so it was almost like yesterday morning when I got up after a couple of miles of hiking, my body felt like I was at the end of the day. So I feel a bunch better today, and I think I'll be able to do a lot better. Today is Sunday, February 19th, and this is actually my 4th day on the trail. So here we are back up at the trailhead. It's just a little short walk up this gravel road. You can see there's parking up here, but you probably noticed that the road was a little washed out, and the shuttle driver said that they don't usually go up there. They want you to come down to the paved road. So it was just a little bit of a walk. I just looked on Far Out to confirm, and I walked 6.53 miles yesterday to get here. And it's 6.2 miles back to the hostel right now. So, I mean, it wasn't what I normally would do, a 6.5 mile or 6.5 mile day. I like to get more than that in, but I just wasn't up to it yesterday. And 6.2 today is, I guess, by some hikers' standards, might be a Nero day, which it is almost a near zero day. But the way I hike, it's about a half a day, a little more than a Nero. But I'm good with it. I did get a really good night's sleep last night. My body feels much more recovered, and then I'm also not carrying a 43-pound pack today. I've just got a little bit of water and snacks and stuff, so makes a difference. That was what my pack weighed when I left the house Thursday, was like 43.5 pounds. I have already identified a couple things I'm going to send back home. And when I say send back home, my wife is coming up to see me today. It's about an hour and 40-minute drive from Franklin to here. And so she's going to come see me, get here around noon or 1 o'clock, something like that. And she's actually bringing my mom with her. So I have doubly something to look forward to today. A little bit of a shorter day, and I get to see my wife again. I've been talking to her about maybe next weekend I'll probably be near Erwin, Tennessee, and maybe she can come up and see me then too. And I think she's open to it because, and quite honestly, after Erwin, it's not going to be nearly as feasible for her to come see me after that on a weekend or any other time. I think when I make it up to Shenandoah, she's going to try to come up and see me then. But that's a few weeks away, and things can happen between now and then, so just sort of take it a day at a time. I am truly enjoying this so far, even though Friday night were brutal. I'm not discouraged at all. I just got to make sure that I plan my days well and be smart about it. Friday, at one point when I was walking, I took a little bit of a stumble, and I didn't fall. I just had to run real fast to keep from falling, and which that can be difficult, carrying that old heavy pack, and you're a little tired too. These trekking poles here they're a real lifesaver. I see a lot of younger people hiking the trail that aren't using them, but for me, I am not going to leave home without them. I'm not using them right now because I'm slack packing. I mean, I'll use them when I put this phone away, but I'm okay without them right now. But they're just a real help to have. But I don't know what happened Friday. I think my one of my right pole got maybe tangled up in a stick or something. I don't know, and it kind of tripped me up, and I was just sort of, I had to take off running to stay on my feet. And in the process, and I don't know how I did it, but one of my poles got bent just a little bit. Here's my two poles together, and the one on the right you can see is just a little bit bent, and I'm not sure. I'd like to try to fix it. Sometimes people would call me a bit of a perfectionist, and I don't know. I wouldn't say that they're totally wrong. I can live with imperfections, but when it comes to something as crucial as a trekking pole that I depend on, I don't want it to have any deficiency. I lean on them a lot too, like when I'm going up hills. Sometimes, depending on how tired I am and how steep it is, I have to just stop and catch my breath. Sometimes, I know it's not really true, but sometimes I feel like I take 20 steps and then I have to stop and catch my breath again and then keep going. And, when I do, a lot of times I lean on them, and with that one bent, I don't want to make it any worse, and I don't want it to buckle under me. So I need to spend a little bit of time looking. I got these things from REI, and they're Black Diamond brand, so they're not like just a cheap Amazon trekking pole. So I need just to research and see if there's any, I don't know if there'd be warranty for something like that, but if I can get a replacement for that section of the pole, I may need to get that fixed. One benefit to these trekking poles that I have found is they give my hands something to do. And because they give my hands something to do, my hands stay warmer. And like right now, carrying this phone in one hand and my other hand's carrying the poles, it's not as, my fingers are getting cold. And so I need to put this phone away and use my hands on these trekking poles and they'll warm up. I've noticed I just did it a second ago. You don't realize you have a bad habit until you look at yourself in a video. I just did it again. I sniff. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna try to break myself or do something a little different, but I'm learning. I guess people would call that a rhododendron thicket, but I would call it a laurel thicket. I don't know that there's a difference between a laurel and a rhododendron, but you know, I guess people that weren't in the woods of western North Carolina as a kid, they only know rhododendron, it seems like. But look at that here. It's I call them laurels. When I was a kid, I had a friend. We used to play in the woods all the time. His name's Barry, but back then I called him Rowdy. But a lot of times we would just go up and get to the top of a ridge of a laurel thicket and climb down through the trees. And it was like a game. The object of it was to never touch the ground. Just stay in the trees the whole time and just work your way down the mountain. My goodness, that was a lot of fun. It is such a shame. A lot of times, I told you before, I think I used to be a school resource officer for a time. And there I did that stupid sniffle again. But working at an elementary school, and kids are just so different than they were. And I know people say, oh, that's just generation. But nowadays, I would ask the kids, just sort of hanging out with them on the playground or something, what do you like to do? What do you do when you get home from school? And almost every kid, they go home and play video games all the blessed time. And I ask them, I say, have you ever climbed a tree? And they'd look at me like I had two heads, and why would I want to climb a tree? And I mean, that's just I guess a difference between the childhood that I had and the childhood that these kids nowadays are growing up with. Now, I know there's some exceptions. There's some kids that are just growing up like I did, playing in the woods and playing in the yard and having chickens and all that kind of stuff. But mostly, though, they just play stupid video games. And I say stupid because I hate them. And you know, a lot of them, you'll say, what kind of games do you play? Call of Duty and Minecraft or what? No, it's not Minecraft. I can't think of it right now. But and I ask them, I say, what's the object of the game? And for the most part, these games, a lot of them are playing is to kill people or kill opponents. And I just think, what in the world is that teaching kids? I think it's so much more healthy for them to just be outside. And I'm probably biased just comparing it to my childhood, but they're just, as a whole, they're just not as healthy as kids were when I was that age. I just thought of the names of one of the games that I heard kids say they play is Grand Theft Auto or GTA. You're talking second graders playing this. If you don't know what that game is, look it up. Kids don't need to be playing those games. Another game is Fortnite. That screenshot I just included was from my Far Out app. Just on the left side, the black circle with the P in it was where the shuttle driver set me out. All the way to the right is where I'm heading in Hot Springs. So you can see I've just now reached the highest point I'm going to be at today. Not a lot of view here. Actually, I can see quite a bit, but only through the trees. And the picture, the photograph or the video is just not going to show it as well. But regardless, it is a beautiful day to be out in the woods, enjoying God's creation. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for letting me do this. Other than to stop to take a photo or two, I have not stopped to catch my breath a single time up that little bit of an incline, which I can say it was a little bit of an incline because it wasn't anything like some I've already done. But I can tell such a difference. But the other part of it too is I'm not carrying that stupid 43-pound pack. I would love to be able to figure out some ways to get that pack weight down, but you know, when you're attempting a through hike, you have to have certain things with you and available to you. And one of the heaviest things that I have that I guess is a luxury, but it's almost a necessity, is my battery pack. It's an Anchor brand, and it's a little larger than I would have preferred. It weighs 25 ounces, which when you're thinking about carrying extra weight, 25 ounces is a lot. But I've looked to see what other battery packs weigh, and you know, you're going to be looking at 16 ounces or so anyway. So the difference between 16 ounces and 25 ounces isn't that huge. But I mean, I've already been out here enough to know that you have to be able to recharge your cell phone and maybe a couple other pieces of electronic too. So I can't part with that. I've got a really lightweight sleeping bag, sleeping quilt, and I've got a fairly lightweight tent, that Nebo Hornet 2-person tent. Pretty lightweight. It only weighs about 2 pounds. My clothing pack, I think I weighed it before I left the house, and it was like 11 pounds. I don't really have a lot of clothes I'm carrying, and the clothes I do have, I've tried to stay lightweight, but I just wanted to pack a couple of extra things that, in case I do get cold, which thank God I had it not pour last. But after, you know, we get full into spring and I'm maybe not going into these higher elevation mountains, I can afford to send some of my clothing back. I've noticed a lot of these young hikers, and some older people too, they wear shorts all the blessed time, no matter how cold it is. I told you about that girl I met Friday, and I saw her again yesterday. She was wearing shorts. I mean, when I met her the first time, Friday, I mean, it was freezing cold. I think my water had already frozen at that time in my bottle, and it was like 20, probably 24, 25 degrees. And she was out there wearing shorts, and God bless her. But of course, yesterday it was a lot warmer, so certainly she was wearing shorts then. But when I did some of my hiking back in the fall, I was wearing shorts. Even in fairly colder weather, I was wearing shorts. And I do think it's good and helpful. But right now, it's just cold enough that I've got these pants that the legs zip out of, and I'm gonna stick with those. And, later on when it warms up, I'll zip the legs out of them. But I mean, the legs don't weigh that much. And I don't know. I'll just try to figure out some things that I can get rid of. I had bought a pair of mittens. They weren't really for backpacking. They were, I don't know what, some kind of Carhartt mittens. And yeah, I've got big hands. I do have big hands, and it's hard to fit me big hands. Fit gloves. And Friday, when I was getting so cold, my hands were getting cold, I tried to put those mittens on, and my hands were wet. My manual dexterity, so to speak, was being compromised, and I could not get those daggone things on my hands. And so I ended up wearing my wool gloves, which I usually just sleep in those. But the wool gloves, of course, they got wet. So I know those mittens are going back with my wife. And I was going to try to carry a second cell phone. I mean, I know that probably sounds like insane to some people. I came up on a hiker, and I guess I'm a little self-conscious about doing this still, so I just cut my camera off for a second. Spoke with him just a second. Real nice fella. He's just section hiking up here for the weekend. But I was saying about my mittens and my gloves and all that kind of situation. I went to the outfitter there in Hot Springs, Bluff Mountain Outfitters, and they're legit. Sometimes, you see outfitter, and especially while you're in the city and you see like in a mall or something like that and it says outfitters, you can go, yeah, right. They're not really outfitters. But, that place, they have some good stuff. Now, back home, we have a couple of outfitters that are legit. Outdoor 76, friends of mine there. Great people in Franklin. Three Eagles Outfitters in Franklin. They're legitimate outfitters. But legitimate outfitters are sort of few and far between, to be honest with you, in my experience anyway. But I can tell you that Bluff Mountain, they definitely, and I went in and told the guy, I said, I need some gloves. And he took me right over, and I'd been to some outfitters before, and the problem I've had, even when I was down in Mountain Crossings in Georgia, I mean, they're a legitimate outfitter too. But I looked at gloves even then, and they didn't have anything that fit my hands, my big old hands. But Bluff Mountain, they had a good selection of gloves. I think called Sealskins and Outdoor Research and a couple other things. They even had some that was, really leathered and high-end kind of things. But they had a pair of outdoor research gloves in XL, and get my hands in them, hallelujah. So I bought a pair of those, and I don't have them on right now, I don't need them, but I really like them. I'm very pleased. They have a liner, and then the outer glove is waterproof, and they just don't weigh hardly anything. So that'll be a huge improvement over those mittens that I had. Now this looks like it's an absolutely awesome stealth site, as they say. Not an authorized campsite, but you can tell people have been camping here. Looks like a couple of different places. I've not camped at too many stealth sites yet. There's one time down in Georgia, I did stay in a stealth site. I think maybe a couple of times I stayed in stealth sites. No problem with that, especially if the weather's nice. I've just decided for me though, I'm gonna try to be either in or near the shelters, especially if bad weather is predicted, because I don't want to have to pack my tent up in the rain. Don't want to have to set it up in the rain either. If I have to, I can. But if you have a choice, why not take the better choice? I tell you what, this is just an absolute beautiful day to be out here. I'll talk a little bit about Shuttles. These people were really nice. I can't remember the guy's last name, but his first name is Jason. It's easy for me to remember that because I have a son named Jason. But I think he was unavailable today, and he sent an associate of his named Michelle yesterday and today. Michelle was really nice, and this was my first real experience with using a shuttle service. I stayed in Stokoe Gap at a hostel there, and the owner of the hostel, he came and got me and brought me back. Cabins in the Mountains is the name of that shelter in Stokoe, and I highly recommend it. Guy was super nice. Rates was good, amazing rates, and he actually picked me up and took me back to the trailhead, included in the cost of the shuttle, or this hostel. So you just can't beat that. But this was my first experience of actually calling a shuttle, having to come get me and then bring me back. And I guess I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to charge. I was a little surprised. It was a little more than I expected. But there again, especially this time of year, there's only one hiker. And so she was, in this particular case, she was coming out about 25 minutes out to get me and bring me back. So she's got 50 minutes or so in it, and her gas and all. So, you know, I really can't complain. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it and try to make a living at it. But it was expensive enough that I don't know that I'll be doing a lot of shuttling. Just try to be more smart about it in my planning, and if I do need to shuttle, maybe just make it shorter distances and not where they have the shuttle driver has close to an hour commitment into servicing me, and it's just me alone. If there gets to be more hikers on the trail, maybe, I don't know if they charge each hiker the same price. I don't know how they do that, but I guess as I go along, I'll find out. I mentioned that spare cell phone a minute ago. I have an AT&T plan right now, and I'm sort of locked into it for another couple of years. I'd been with Verizon before, and I have regretted switching to AT&T, but I got to stick it out a little bit longer. But I had got my son to add me to his Verizon plan and activated this phone, and I thought, well, I'll just carry a second phone. And I weighed the phone. I knew what I was getting into, but the thing weighs 8 ounces. And again, you think, well, 8 ounces, not that big of a deal, but 8 ounces here and 8 ounces there, and 2 ounces here and 2 ounces there, it adds up. And so I'm going to be sending that back with my wife and try it without it for a time. I'm not going to have him deactivate it yet. But I did find that, especially up in the Smokies, for example, well, I mean, all the way through, everything I've hiked so far, I've had pretty good cell reception everywhere. There's times when it goes out. You're out of signal range, but mostly it's pretty good, even with AT&T. But Verizon does beat AT&T. And there's my shadow. And so I thought I would carry that Verizon phone, but I've decided against that. I guess a person could stealth camp right in here if they needed to also, especially if they had a hammock. I'm not a hammock person, I don't think. I don't know. I know there's benefits to hammocks, but the problem with being my experience, at least with hammocks, is I'm pretty much a side sleeper to the extent that I sleep well at all. I have to sleep on my side, and I'm not sure how sleeping on your side is compatible with a hammock. So I have decided to stick with the tent. I know I'm being a little bit more talkative today than I have been, partly because I'm not under the burden of this pack and I feel really good. But sort of make a comment about hikers, and I made a comment about hikers yesterday. That seeing those guys at Bluff Mountain Outfitters yesterday just sort of reminded me. I don't know. I don't want anybody to take this wrong or anything. I'm not insulting anybody, especially not hikers. Hikers give off a certain vibe that I just like and admire, and they're an earthy type, and I guess people would call them a little bit toward hippie, especially if you grew up in the 60s and 70s. You know what I'm talking about. They're a little hippie-ish, and I don't know. I like that. I'm not a hippie, and I could just never be a hippie. I'm not. But it's funny. One of my sons, John, told me one time. He said, Dad, you're really a hippie at heart, or something like that. And I took that as a compliment. But I mean, you have already seen me, and I mean, I'm just not a hippie, and I don't give off that vibe. And letting my beard grow, and I'm not going to get a haircut while I'm doing this hike, or at least I don't plan to. And I may look pretty shaggy, but I've mostly always been pretty much a clean-cut guy. Most of my adult life, I've been in law enforcement, and you sort of had to have a little bit of a clean-cut air about you anyway. And I'm just want to change a little bit and just sort of be a little bit more relaxed and all. But back to the hiker vibe, though. I really admire that, and it wouldn't offend me if someone told me I gave off that vibe, but I don't think I'm there yet. The first screenshot was from an app that I have that identifies mountains. And if you look in the middle of that screenshot, it shows Mount Mitchell. And then the second still shot was, what I was actually seeing. So it's pretty cool that you can see Mount Mitchell from here. There was a certain point yesterday when I was on the highest peak that I did yesterday, which, I told you I was just tired, so worn out. But I was looking at that app, and it showed Mount Rogers, which is up in Virginia. I thought that was pretty cool, and I tried to screenshot it. It didn't work, and when I held my phone back up again to do it again, man, I was just so blame tired. I just couldn't hold my phone up and just keep on. I knew I needed to get going, so I just gave up. I try to do that from time to time, though. It's interesting to see the mountains in a distance, and especially that app, and it identifies, what's out there. I used it some going through the Smokies, and sort of just helps me to know where I've been or where I'm going as far as looking at the mountains and knowing what they look like. Pretty cool. I decided to get off the trail just a minute because I saw the sign for the shelter, and I thought I'd come up and check it out. There's the privy up on the hill over there. Doesn't appear to be a real big shelter, but definitely serves its purpose. It's on a beautiful site. Absolutely beautiful up here. That's the guy's gear that I met a little while ago. He told me he had left his gear here at the shelter while he hiked up to Bluff Mountain and back. I think I'll sign the log. This is a pretty nice shelter. I'm glad I stopped in to check it out. This is the spring right below the shelter. You can see it's got a water pipe, but I guess it's gotten stopped up from the leaves and isn't really running any water. You could scoop some up in that little pool with your bladder and filter it out. You'll be fine. I've seen worse already. I saw worse up in the Smokies. One time up in the Smokies, I had to just basically find a little pond of water, and it was pretty, had little squiggly things wiggling around in it. I don't think it was mosquitoes, something else a little bit bigger than a mosquito larva, but wasn't thrilled about having to scoop it up, but I needed water, and that's the only choice I had. My Sawyer squeeze did the job, though, and I didn't get sick afterwards, so I'll take it. So here I am back at Laughing Heart Hostel. It's taken me about 3 hours to do 6.2 miles. And it was a really good hike. I felt really good, so much better than yesterday. So I'm going to get in and maybe get a shower before my wife gets here and sort of chill out for the rest of the day.